Hello, NWA fan, Twitterverse, YouTube, interwebs, MySpace, Napster, LiveJournal, Amanda Palmer. If you're listening, we love you. This is a very, very special episode of Piper's Notes, and so much so that I had to allow her to let me do this introduction because this is someone who is venerated in our household. He's someone that's been part of our lives her whole life since she's been born. This is a guy who I consider one of the gods of rock and roll, various multi-talented genius who's done things in post-punk, punk, new wave, progressive, industrial music. He's done it all. He's in fashion, and he is one of my heroes, one of Piper's heroes. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm just so pleased to introduce you to the great William Control.
Thanks a lot for having me.
How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing fantastic, actually. It's really nice weather up here in Washington, and there's not a lot of traffic. So
now we live right outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee. So we're not, which is only an hour or 2 hours from Nashville, and I see some Elvis behind you. I see some like Johnny Cash themed William Control prints back there on your wall. Amazing collection back there. Tell me about some of that.
Oh man, I've traveled the world for 15 years. I was on tour and collected some really interesting stuff along the way. I'm a big Elvis, Johnny Cash, Sam Cooke, Frank Sinatra fan, and I just got cool shit that I've collected along the way that I'd like to hang up.
So some of you guys have obviously. Go ahead, brother.
I'll tell you one of the funniest stories. I don't know if you could see. You see the one of Jesus?
Yeah,
in the old.
With
like there's an Elvis face on it. That's a piece that I made that I call the Real King.
Oh man!
And not as a slight to Jesus or Christianity or whatever, but just because Elvis is so awesome, I wanted to buy the frame from an antique store in Cleveland, and the guy, I was like, "Hey man, I really like this frame. You can keep the Jesus picture for, some religious person." And he was like, "No, you keep the Jesus." And he wouldn't let me leave the shop without the Jesus. So I made a little piece of art with Elvis there.
That's cool, man. We were talking earlier, and I was telling you that I'd seen you well before she was alive. A dozen times or so at the old Masquerade in Atlanta. You've obviously performed in Atlanta, all throughout the South, and in Nashville. What are some of the venues, your favorite venues in Nashville, since you've got a Johnny Cash and Elvis Presley appreciation that you've performed at? What are some ones that you remember?
Well, I'll tell you what. I've played Atlanta every single time I've ever toured. So every tour I've ever done in the U.S., I've played Atlanta. And I've actually only played in Nashville, I think, twice.
Okay.
Over the years. And Nashville is one of those weird cities where it's kind of like Austin. Like, you have, obviously, a lot of great history. It's Nashville. But the thing about Nashville and places like Austin is that it's filled with people the people that work at the venues are usually people that are, guys that wanted to tour or are musicians and are trying to tour, or maybe they're failed musicians and now this is their job. And my experience has been in those cities where you have these people who are kind of failed musicians. They don't like musicians that are succeeding. You know what I mean? So I've had some really bad experiences where in venues where I've just been treated like really terribly because I'm a musician on tour and there's, hundreds of people there to see my band.
Right.
So I'm not a big, I'm a big fan of Nashville, like as an idea, and obviously I love the history, but as a performing artist, I'm not really that big of a fan of Nashville.
Right. I understand now. I understand. I mean, you think most of our, I was telling you before we went live here, we started recording that most of our fan base is pro wrestling, oriented, and there's a lot of crossover which we'll get into. But you see that, there. I guess there's some with workers there who've not cracked in. There's a little bit of resentment there sometimes that might surface, and people want to, I don't like this guy or that guy, or that guy's gimmick is ridiculous or whatever. But well, he made it, so you can't fault a man for being successful.
Yeah, there's a lot of elitism, like, oh, I'm so cool. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. People are just musicians, man.
Right.
Stop, you're not that
cool. Yeah, we're all people at the end of the day, man. We're all the same, So.
I'll tell you who's cool. Elvis Presley in the 1968 comeback special, okay?
Now,
that's cool.
Is Elvis your favorite of all time when it comes to rock and rollers?
I mean, him and Johnny Cash, yeah, for sure.
What about bands like, I know you're obviously not going to remember this, but you and I had a conversation very briefly at the Masquerade years ago, almost a decade ago, where we were talking about Depeche Mode and The Cure and some of their influences and all that. I was just wanted, to speak to your about the new wave influence and the sort of the gothic rock influence, because that's evident in the Will Control project that you did. Not as much in Aiden, but Will Control, you definitely hear Depeche Mode, you hear Interpol, you hear The Cure, you hear all those influences coming out.
Yeah, I mean, I love that, 80s synth rock, new romantic, kind of throwback sound. And when I was a kid, I grew up in the 80s. Right, in the early 90s is kind of when I started discovering music. And my brother had 3 cassette tapes that he played consistently. 4. He had Depeche Mode's Violator, Duran Duran, Blood Sugar Sex Magic by the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and Nirvana's Nevermind. And that was like his... that was what I was listening to when I was, Piper's age, all the time in the house. And so I got a taste for that stuff really early on. And that's kind of when MTV really started to, explode in people's households. Like, I just remember as a kid, MTV was constantly on. And because my brother's 12 years older than me.
Yeah.
And so I was always listening to new music and seeing those videos. Man, that video for Enjoy the Silence was just over and over, just played it again and again. And that Smells Like Teen Spirit video was, it was never ending.
Right.
So I had a taste for that stuff really early on. And through my adolescence, when I started getting angrier, I discovered punk rock.
Yeah.
And I really loved the Misfits a lot. I loved the Damned. So a lot of like the Aiden influences really are the Misfits, the Damned, David Bowie, and then a lot of the skate punk stuff like NoFX and Bad Religion.
Right.
So the William Control stuff is more influenced by New Order. Joy Division is one of my favorite bands.
Oh man, yes. That's what I'm saying. You've always like your interests and stuff, and like even the way you look, you have always, and I've got a beard so you can't tell, but we kind of resemble each other. People have always kind of said, yeah, you look like a Will Control from Aiden and the Will Control project and all that stuff, and it's like, well, I'll take that as a compliment. That's my boy. We spoke earlier. You've done some major tours. You've done Taste of Chaos. You've done Vans Warped Tour. You've toured with guys like The Used, My Chemical Romance, 30 Seconds to Mars. Going back through those, who would you say like your favorite tour mates were? The bands that you really connected with?
Definitely The Used. Like I remember kind of I mean, it was probably 2000. It was 2005 when Nightmare Anatomy came out.
Yep.
And that era of Victory Records, we were all selling a lot of records, and it was the first time that I was successful with music. And we started getting all these tours. You know, we toured with 30 Seconds to Mars. We toured with, on Warped Tour. And when we got the Taste of Chaos tour, I was like, oh my God, because The Used was one of my favorite bands at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, they had those first couple albums were, just the greatest current albums I had heard from a, current band. And when we got that tour, we were kind of stacked in the middle. There was, I think, 8 bands on that tour. And I don't know what it was, man, but Bert and I really just connected. We were born like a month apart from each other, and I don't know, we really just connected on that first tour, and we became really great friends. And we did a bunch of tours after that together.
Yeah.
And I think probably The Used is my favorite band I've ever toured with.
That's cool. I remember going out to get a drink. I was on a date with my girlfriend at the time, and my favorite Aiden songs, because I love Nightmare Anatomy. That song was like, I mean, I know people tell you this all the time. I'm not trying to fanboy Mark out here, but that album is a great album. It's just a great album. I mean, shoot, every song on there is great, but Genetic Design for Dying, because it reminds me of my mom. And of course, The Last Sunrise and Die Romantic. But I remember being like, I love Genetic Design for Dying. That song just resonates with me. I remember being out, had to go to the bathroom real bad. I was going to get a drink for us, and you started playing it. It's like, oh man, here, hold these. Ran back into the venue, just left all my stuff there to make sure I was able to catch that song. But great stuff, good times, man.
And that was a crazy record to make, I was so young when we made that album, and when we started that band, we were all just like broke punk kids from, the suburbs of Seattle.
Right.
And the first album we made, I sold my car to pay for the recording, and so I was riding the bus down to where we practiced from the city down to my drummer's house. And when we got signed, Victory was like, hey, we're going to give you the first album we did for $6,000. And this is, the early 2000s, and it still cost a lot of money to record back then.
Mm-hmm.
You had to get a studio, you had to get tape, 2-inch quantity tape, and you had to have a producer, and it was like a big deal. And the first album we made, I think, in 5 days for $6,000. And then Nightmare Anatomy, when Victory signed us, they're like, we're going to give you $20,000. And we were like, $20,000? Oh my God, we're rich!
Yeah.
And we did that album. We did that album in 14 days, and we spent the whole $20,000. Because it's like almost $1,000 a day.
Yeah.
In a studio.
Right.
That's how much it cost. It was so expensive. And it wasn't even a great studio, too. It was terrible.
Now, when you were touring to promote the record, does it cost? I mean, did you make money on the tour, or was that an investment as well? Because I know a lot of bands talk about, you think you go on tour, you're getting these venues and you're drawing all these gates, but a lot of times bands will lose money to tour to promote their stuff.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. That's kind of a long story. I mean, when we started the band, I was like, look, if we could just draw 100 kids a night and I could just afford to buy a new pair of jeans when mine rip because I'm playing shows in them every night, I'm good. Like, this is a punk. I'm ready to do this, and as the band started selling records and as we started drawing more and more people, we started, we need a guitar tech, and we need a drum tech. Now we have too many people, we need a bus, and it became more and more expensive to tour, like as we grew as a band.
Right.
And I remember we would do tours, and it would be, we made like $50,000, and then we get back, and my business manager would be like, okay, well, you got to send me $47,500 for the Amex bill.
God.
So
now by the time Conviction came out,
broke even.
Right, when Conviction came out and Rain in Hell, the EP that you guys did, by that time, man, y'all were like big time, right? I mean, y'all were those. It wasn't a matter of, hey, we're counting peanuts here now and again. I mean, y'all were established and were able to do creatively what you wanted to do and financially be pretty solvent with that.
Yeah. I mean, here's an interesting story, man. When we did Conviction, right, for Nightmare Anatomy, we got $20,000. And for a bunch of broke punk kids from the suburbs, that was a lot of money.
Right.
And when we did Conviction, we had sold quite a number of records. And your recording advance is based on how many records you sell, right? You get a percentage. Every record you sell, you get money in the pot to go to the next record. And so when we did Conviction, man, I think we spent $100,000. We spent $100,000 to make that album. And here's the craziest part. Because I wrote all the songs, right? I had some really basic recording equipment that I recorded demos with. And you take demos to a producer and you're like, here's our demos. And the producer's like, okay, well, cool. Well, this verse sucks and this chorus sucks and this thing sucks. Let's do this, this, and this. And he produces your stuff. This producer didn't do any of that. We sat in the studio for like 6 weeks in the most expensive studio in Seattle, which is Robert Lang, which is a great studio, by the way. And we made this album that it just sounds really awesome. But it didn't change from the demos. So I think I calculated it up. It was we spent $50,000 just on the producer, and the producer literally just laid on the couch the whole time and told the engineer to be like he would tell the engineer like, okay, cool, that sounds good, do it again, and he would just lay on the couch the whole time, every day, all day. And that's when I decided, you know what, I'm not going to pay for this anymore. I'm going to produce the albums and I'm going to record these albums because this is ridiculous. $100,000?
Yeah. Right.
So more of that.
Right. So most of our viewers are wrestling fans. Very, very intelligent wrestling fans. I'm really offended when people. I'm a high school principal here locally, and I get offended when people denigrate wrestling because I'm like, you've got rednecks that watch wrestling for sure. You got rednecks that listen to rock and roll, but the core of our community that follow us in Twitter and all that, they're highly intelligent people, very refined. They're literate. They read. They're well. Most of them have college degrees, And I was just curious, and Piper and I talked about this about you. Did you grow up a wrestling fan at all? I know you have a wrestling connection, so can you talk a little bit about wrestling and
Yeah. I was born in the 80s, so I was born in the heyday of Hulk Hogan, Macho Man. I remember when the Undertaker came out. Like, oh, it's a new wrestler, and he's the Undertaker, and he's spooky. So I grew up around wrestling, and I grew up kind of in the heyday of that stuff. Jake the Snake, the Bushwick Brothers.
Yeah.
I was a little kid, and I loved it. I know wrestling gets a bad rap, but I'll tell you what. I dated a wrestler. I was with a woman named Ashley Massaro, who recently passed away. And when I met her, Aiden had released Nightmare Anatomy. And this is 2005, right? So this is before Facebook and before Twitter and Instagram and all. It's, MySpace was a thing, but there was no real social media. So Aiden had a website, and you could email us. You could just go to the Aiden website and email Jake or email Will. And I was in New York City doing vocal lessons before the Krang tour, and it was my last day there. And I'm with my buddy, and I get an email, and it's like, hey, my name's Ashley. I'm a big fan of your album, Nightmare Anatomy. I can't wait for you guys to do a tour and come to New York. And by the way, I wrestle for WWE, and I hope to see you soon. And I was like, oh, okay. And as a new, when we started, I was really trying to answer all my emails and, get the word out about this album. So I just emailed her back like, hey, cool. I'm thanks for, emailing me. I hope I'm going to be back from the UK here in February. We'll be on tour with 30 Seconds to Mars. I'm in New York City right now. I'm leaving tonight. She's like, she emails me back. She's like, oh, I'm in New York City. I live in New York City. And I'm like, okay. And we just started talking. And meanwhile, my friend had picked me up from vocal lessons. And we were headed to Long Island to hang out with his buddy. And I'm still talking to her, and I'm telling my friend, my buddy Danny and his friend Kenny, who I became really good friends with, and he was in my band for a number of years. I'm telling him, like, hey, man, there's this chick, and she's, like, emailing me, and she's a wrestler, and do you know who this is? And they're like, nah, man, she's probably just a crazy fan. She wants to wear your skin to her birthday. And we're talking, and I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to Long Island, and then I'm flying out. She's like, oh, my God, I live in Long Island, and we should meet up. And I'm like, okay, well, this is where we're going to be. We're going to be at this bar. And my friends were making fun of me the whole time. Like, dude, you're going to get killed. This is crazy. And we show up, and she pulls up in like a $100,000 Mercedes-Benz. Meanwhile, I'm a little kid, okay? I'm like 23 years old, and this broad shows up in like a full mink coat, like $100,000 Mercedes. And I was like, and she was so beautiful. I was like, I cannot believe this is real. and we stayed in touch, and when I got back from the UK, we totally hung out in New York City for a week. It was so awesome.
That's cool, man.
So
that's an amazing story. I'm still in my daughter's show here. This is supposed to be her show, but I'm just, I feel like I just feel connected to you, bro. So,
I have a few questions for you. One, what kind of things is your son into at all?
What kinds of things is my son into?
Yeah.
Oh, man, you know what? He goes in phases. Like, when he was a little kid, he loved Thomas the Tank Engine. Everything was Thomas. Trains, railroad tracks, and then he got into cars, and it was Lightning McQueen. Currently, he's into Minecraft. What else did he play? He plays... I got him one of those Nintendo Switches. I don't know if you've seen those.
Yeah.
So he loves that Minecraft and Super Mario Brothers and Mario Kart. He was into Fortnite for a while, which I totally didn't like, but he was.
Now, does
and he just started getting into making videos, like little arty videos with a hand puppet, and he like makes these funny little videos around the house.
Is he aware that Dad's a big rock star, and does he rock out with you? I've got an 18-month-old, and she just like instantly picked up on the rock gene. She loves it. We play Rob Zombie or we play something in this house, she just goes nuts. So, I mean, is your son, does he carry that on? Was he into all that?
Yeah. He he's been coming to my shows since he was a little baby.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, he loves it.
And you said he's Piper's age.
There was a period of years where he would just like run out on stage in the middle of me playing a song.
That's cool, man.
But I'd have to like pick him up and take him back over,
Yeah.
But yeah, he's been a big fan for a long time.
And he's Piper's age right now. So they're, because she's saying Minecraft, Roblox, that kind of thing. That's the things she's into.
Yep.
So.
Yep. So he's 10. I think, I don't know how old Piper is. How old are you?
10.
10? Yeah.
So, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just about to go into 5th grade.
So, I really like theater. My favorite Broadway musical is Phantom of the Opera. Do you have any Broadway musicals or Broadway characters that you like?
I'm not sure if I have a favorite Broadway play that I like.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up on musicals. So when I was a kid, my parents loved musicals. And couple of my favorite movies are musicals. Oliver is one of my favorites. West Side Story is one of my favorites. I love the Willy Wonka with...
Gene Wilder. or Johnny Depp.
The Gene Wilder one.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of musicals, but I've seen a lot of them.
And there's
The
that,
Music Man, My Fair Lady. There's some great ones.
when you listen to or you go and experience a Will Control show or an Aiden show, you get that Willy Wonka feel, man. There's these elements. It's subtle. It's not. You can't quite pinpoint it, but the threads are there for sure. Well, what we mentioned earlier that Will toured with 30 Seconds to Mars back on, I think it was either Warped Tour or Taste of Chaos or one of those. And so we thought it'd be really cool today to watch the music video "The Kill" and rock out to that with William Control. If you're cool with that, brother.
Yeah.
All right. What we'll do, I sent you the link to it, and you should have it there. Is that right? So
yeah.
If you're ready to go, what we'll do is I'll on the count of 3, we'll just hit play at the same time. So we're kind of watching at the same time, and we'll just comment, react, rock out, whatever. Sound good?
Okay.
All right, brother. All right. On 3, 2, 1, and go. Jared Leto, man, this is another one who is a multi-threat actor,
for 3 days, all to ourselves.
influencer, rock and roller.
Single soul here.
Now, do you?
Yeah, man, he's a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah. Were you able to connect at all with him during the tour?
Yeah, man. You know what? We did 3 tours with 30 Seconds to Mars. And we were on tour with them when they went and filmed this video. Let's see, where it was Toronto, actually. And we played the show. And I've been a Jared Leto fan since My So-Called Life. Right? And
yeah.
It was played in the... I watched that show as an adolescent. And so I've known about this guy for a long time, all throughout my childhood. I loved Requiem for a Dream, Lord of War, Panic Room. Like, he was one of my favorite actors. And when we got word that we were going to tour with him, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to be on tour with Jared Leto. And this was pre The Kill. Now, I don't know if you know, but before this video came out, they were a kind of a relatively obscure band.
Mm-hmm. We were subscribing to AP magazine, and all that. But I remember, they would come out with the flags, with the Japanese flags and all that. That was kind of their state. They would come through the crowd. It was just so.
Yeah.
It was huge, man. It was. This is now you like horror movies, don't you?
Oh yeah, The Shining.
Yeah. So this is obviously now Piper. We don't really let her watch horror yet. That's coming, but. I was kind of prepping her somewhat for The Shining and Stanley Kubrick and. Did you see the sequel?
Yeah, the Doctor Strange or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's what it. Doctor Strange, wasn't that what it was?
Yeah.
What was your reaction to it?
Doctor Sleep.
Doctor Sleep. That's what it was. Yeah, Doctor Sleep.
I thought it was fantastic, man.
Yeah.
Ewan McGregor?
Yeah.
You can't go wrong. Yeah, I thought they did a really good job. Man. It was really beautiful. But yeah, I remember when they filmed this video, man, they took off, and when we would play shows with them in the beginning there was about 400-500 people there. They were really small shows. And 90% of the people were there just to see Jared Leto in real life on stage. Like, oh, it's Jordan Catalano from My So-Called Life. And they were weird shows, man, because there was like 3 rows of people who were hardcore, like 30 Seconds to Mars is my favorite band, I'm in the echelon, and this is, But the rest of the people were there just like bros and jocks and moms, people that didn't usually go to rock shows. So the show was weird. And when they went and they filmed this video, and this was 2006. February we toured with them. February, March, they filmed this video. It came out, I think, April or something. And it blew them up to one of the biggest bands in America. I mean, they were selling 30, 40,000 records a week. And by the time Warped Tour came around, they were humongous. It was pretty awesome.
That's cool, man. Yeah, this is great because like they recreate all these Shining scenes, and instead of it being the Shine, it's them. You know. We did a.
He's a really talented guy.
Oh man.
Like one of the most talented people I've ever met.
Is he very personable? Like, did you ever feel like, we were talking earlier about people resenting people or people feeling elitist. Did you ever get that vibe from him, or was he always very, cool with you?
No, man, he was. He's kind of he's a weird guy. For his whole life, people have been telling him, you can't do wrong, ain't no wrong. You're perfect. Everything you do is amazing, right? He's been given awards. The band is huge. Everything he does is critically acclaimed, So that kind of makes someone a certain way. And when he's around a bunch of people, he's Jared Leto.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But when you get, if you can, in the rare instance where you get him when you're just alone with him, he's like one of the most interesting people I've ever spoken to. Where he does like these impressions of other actors. Like he does the best Christopher Walken impression I've ever heard. And when you're with him by yourself and you can just have a regular conversation, you can talk about like Nirvana and Nicolas Cage and just random stuff like that. It's when other people come around that he has to put up his I'm Jared Leto.
Sure.
Yeah, he's a really interesting guy, man.
That's funny, man.
What a video.
So how many tats do you have?
Too many to count.
You lost count after 20, huh?
Yep.
Yeah. That's cool, man.
Too many.
We were watching what is the video earlier today where it's going in reverse, and the clothes are coming back on. What was that one?
Oh, All the Love.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, great song, man. Great song. Me and my buddy at work were watching that today. We did our virtual graduation at high school today. We can only bring in so many kids at a time, so we're having to space them out and all that. But it's so I was like, yeah, I'm gonna hang out with Will Control this evening. Will Control was like, yeah, from Aiden. Oh yeah. Let's look at it. So we were looking at that video. But Pipe, what else? You had a couple other questions.
Oh yeah, what is the day like with your family, basically? What is the day like?
So what does a day in the house of William Control look like?
Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty normal, man. I'm writing a lot. We cook dinner, play video games sometimes. It's a pretty normal, probably pretty much the same as your life.
Sure.
Play some video games, eat some snacks, watch some cartoons.
Are you a sports fan at all? Do you like baseball or the NFL or anything like college football or anything like that?
No, I'm not a big sports fan. I just kind of don't have the time.
Yeah.
Oh,
I get it. Yeah. We do a lot of baseball down here. Of course, that part of that's me. I kind of forced it on them. I was raised with the Atlanta Braves and the National Wrestling Alliance and rock and roll. That's what we had growing up, and so that's kind of what my kids get. So.
I mean, I grew up, watching the Mariners. I was a big Ken Griffey Jr. fan when I was a kid. But kind of, through my adolescence, once I discovered punk rock, it was pretty much over for everything else. I'm going to do punk rock.
Right. Yeah, that's a good guilty pleasure.
Oh yeah. What is your guilty pleasure in music?
Guilty pleasure in music? I don't know.
It's cool if you
I
like
don't know if
K-pop or if you have Bieber fever. That's perfectly cool with us.
No. I don't know if I really feel guilty about it. I really like that Harry Styles guy,
Yeah.
the One Direction kid.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I'll tell you what, he's one of the greatest singers I've ever heard. But I don't feel guilty about liking him.
Well, we had a guest on a previous episode, and he made that same point. And I wish more people would say that. We kind of asked that because when we're interviewing these big wrestlers, these old up wrestlers, and we're like, what's your guilty pleasure? Every now and then they'll say, well, I'm a huge, I like Fonzie, I like Justin Bieber, I like One Direction. But our last guest was like, you know what? If you like it, don't be guilty about it. It's an art form. So we teach our kids, you don't shame anybody. That's art, and the world is big enough for all of that. Plenty big enough. So, well, anything else, Fit?
Well, I don't think I have anything else.
Man, Will, you have been so gracious hanging out with us, man. I'm going to treasure these moments. It's been so cool. You're freaking awesome. Like I said, you have been held in high esteem in the Stinson house for years and years and years. And I know people tell you that all the time, but that's sincere. I feel like, as far as in the history of my life goes, Nightmare Anatomy. I love the Will Control Project. Don't get me wrong, but Nightmare Anatomy for me is like, it's one of the most important records. It's up there with Disintegration and Violator, as far as I'm concerned. So, you hold that esteem in our house, and we appreciate you coming on our show, man. It's been a real treat.
I think it's really cool what you guys are doing together as a family, and it's been my pleasure.
Awesome, man. Well, we're going to let you go, brother. You have a good evening. Be safe out there, okay?
All right. Thanks a lot.